Madam, it is really a great thing to interact with you with such a great
Oh,
years of
really?
experience, that too in industry where competition is pakka cutthroat. And talking about challenge is the only thing I think what you face every second of your professional life.
Correct.
All sorts of challenges. Is it not?
Correct, definitely. And in each company, there is a lot of challenges, and as we handle different challenges, we also keep learning. That is one good thing. And in
Yes,
HR,
yes.
the kind of challenges, I mean, this one year, what has happened? Our job itself has changed. Don't know whether I'm doing HR or I've become a medical officer in the company, but completely different thing right now. We are actually looking for oxygen cylinders, oxygen concentrators, and also, and I mean, it's a very different challenge. But yes, to answer your question, sir, one of the challenges I can say in current companies, there are a lot of new people joining and the old. So amalgamating the new with the old, that is one of the challenges that we face. New employees and the old employees, each one comes with a certain set of skills. So the old employee, the vintage is really good because the vintage is important. They have the tenure, they have the client confidence, trust of the client, and then they have the knowledge of the domain, and they have knowledge of the process and the systems. New employees come with certain other skills like strategic thinking or process improvement skills or excellent communication skills, but they don't have any clue of how this organization works. Now bringing them all together, integrating them, is the challenge. One of the very very important, the very the crucial challenge. How bringing different types of people together. Then other challenge I can say is different teams. New teams are being formed. So there are units associated with every fund house. Back office units are there, but we have created some new departments. When these new departments are created, the challenge is multifold. The roles and responsibilities change. Like for example, we created a product management group. So we had a software division. We have already 450 people are there in the software team, and then we have a back office team which does the operations. And then there used to be some interaction between the software development team and the back office team, and they used to do change management, process changes, system changes, and all that. Whatever client needs, it used to come from the client to the back office team. Back office team used to work with the software development team, and they used to make the changes. Now, what did we do? We felt that the back office unit manager and the unit operations team could not spend so much time on system and technology. They were more into operations, and clients were dissatisfied. So we created two other teams. We created a key account management team, which was to make sure that client relationships, you're covering all the stakeholders in the client very well. So we added 3 or 4 people over there who will be in sitting in Bombay, who will manage the client. Then we said, we need to have a product team because we are talking about fintech industry, new products, new services, new disruption in the industry. So we created a product management team. A product management team will be between the software development team. It will be an intersection of the technology team, the development team, the operations operations team, and sometimes the client. So we brought in one more new department. Then we created also a customer tech delivery team. We found that the key account management team was able to deal with issues pertaining to service delivery, but not dealing very well on the technical aspects, technological aspects. So we bought a customer tech delivery team to take care of the client's technical requirements. So there were operations. So there are a lot of new teams that are getting created in different stages of formation and different skills. There is conflicts that happen across the team. There are overlapping of jobs, responsibility shifting from A to B, B to C. Something falls between the cracks. There's a lot of blame games. All those dynamics also will happen. But at the end of the day, we are all facing the client and we want the organization to be successful. Everybody has that goal. But that is one of the challenges that we face. And therefore there would be heartburns in one team because it comes to HR. They would come back to HR and say that all the credit is being taken by the other team, but we are the ones who are actually working on the product. So then how do we deal with some dynamics that are there, and how do we make people feel valued, important, respected, and give them also meaningful jobs to do, enriched jobs. So these are some of the challenges I can say. So, and then managing change. When there is a leadership change, how do we manage the change? How do we communicate the changes? And how do we cope with the change? Mainly the problem is the changes that happen in the industry, and how do we live up to those changes, expectation of the regulators, all the market forces, stakeholders in the industry. Change is also very important. New people coming in, assimilating them and handling the change, that is also a challenge only.
Yes, madam. Actually, my questions are, should benefit to the student community. That's why, I asked very basic questions. And at the same time, students should be able to understand what industry people are practicing today. And this is all about innovation and change. Okay. Today's business market is full of change, innovation, and we have continuous change in technology, technical aspects, and other parameters. Keeping that in mind, my question is, as HR person, where do you start your process when you think of going for innovation and change? How your process?
When you're talking about the organization process or?
Yeah, organization process, right from selection of people till the product.
Actually, I'm not fully getting it. When you're talking about innovation and change, what are you exactly referring to? Are you talking about HR process or?
Suppose, yeah, HR process. I'm talking about HR process only. Suppose you are going for a new product, and it is going to be totally new to the market, new to your company. In that case, how your process starts? Where do you start your process?
How do you handle the change process? You are asking. Yes, Damodaran, is that right?
Yes, sir.
How do you ensure the change happens? How do you start? Where do you start? Where do you end the change process? How do you handle the change process?
Okay, I'll just try to answer whatever I can say. Now, for example, if we have created a product department, okay, because we want organization needs change management to be done. So the product management team does both engineering management and product management. What do they focus on? They focus on design. They focus on digitization. They focus on financial technology, disruptive technology, and all those changes. Now, so what is HR's role in supporting that change? We have to build that team. So which means we have to get the best of the designers. We have to get best of the product managers. And how do we select a good product manager in the team? So now, for instance, an operations leader, we have the familiarity with selecting a operations manager. But the product management is a new team. So how do you understand who this product manager is? What is his role? And now we are on one side, we are a legacy organization, 30-year-old organization. On the other side, we have companies like Paytm who can also compete in our, who probably will compete, or even Amazon or Flipkart. Because the services offered are also getting offered. The Olas of the world have disrupted, Ola or Uber have disrupted the transport industry through all these aggregators, right? So even financial services, we can look at aggregator kind of services. So now what we need to do is look at what are the competencies for a good product manager. And then we have to look at the assessment process for that product manager. So the kind of assessment that we do for selecting a product manager will be very different from the kind of assessment that we do for hiring an operations person. So though we've been a largely operations company, now we start changing our HR processes to align to this. So that is one. And then the reward and recognition that we give. Now, for example, performance management or compensation management, we can't use the same, let's say, salary increase percentage what we give for ops with the technology and product management. So there we'll have to tweak our merit increase process or a recognition process or anything for that matter. We'll have to change it to suit a product manager whom we are trying to attract from a very high funda company, a modern company or a new age startup. So it is a challenge for us to attract from a startup into a product management team, and also to keep them engaged, because uh, uh, see, what their expectations is very different from what the expectations in ops. The millennial, again, the different generations are also there. So you have generation X, Y, Z, and the new generation, they work very hard. They can work for 12 hours, 14 hours, etc. But they probably like the weekend off. They wouldn't like to be disturbed on the weekend. So their expectations are different. They like to learn. As long as they learn, they'll stick in the job. Otherwise, they leave. And their ambition. So HR also, we have to adapt to the requirements of the different types of employees whom we are trying to attract. Am I trying to answer that? Or
Thank you. Sure. Madam Rajini, madam, you can.
Yes, madam, continuing what you were talking about, your the leadership styles and personality traits. Can we finally conclude that the type of leadership style what we adopt, what a person adopts in an organization depends on the team what he has to lead?
the type
Every
of
time you
leadership-
cannot. Yes, madam.
No, that is the leadership style you adopt varies depending on the person that you are leading, you can say, on the
Yes.
individual, not exactly on the team. But the leaders in different organizations, they are different. I mean, some leaders are very facilitative. Some leaders are very authoritative. They are prescriptive in nature. Some people just say this is the deliverable, and they don't get into the details.
Can you give some examples? You don't have to take names. Give an example so that people can understand.
I can say that in Nokia, the leaders were very different. Okay. So there was a lot of, they constantly used to promote trust. So the trust-based relationship was one of their value behaviors. Okay. In fact, they have a leadership model called the Nokia leader, which was leading yourself, leading your team, and leading others, right from Ram Charan's book on leadership pipeline. And then the outcome that they expected, they had a very clear framework of how a Nokia leader has to behave. So main thing that a Nokia leader has to do is growth and development, trust-based relationship, and performance, I think, achieving some performance. So the focus of a Nokia leader was always to have a trust-based relationship. They trusted us a lot. So the empowerment was extremely high. So because it's a large company at that time, it was 1.5 lakh employees were there in 2010. And the leaders were all distributed across the countries. Okay, I'll have a boss in Singapore who does not know what work I'm doing, because he doesn't have the domain expertise of a factory. He is sitting in Singapore, he is a leader and he is a boss, that's it. So as long as we are delivering what we are expected to deliver by our stakeholders here, he never interfered. So his job, he was a Indonesian boss. So his only job was setting the KRAs, then doing the reviews, getting feedback from the stakeholders. That's it. He will give your achievement review based on all the inputs that he gets. And then reward and recognition, and having some team building events where we met together. So he would not get into details of, so I've seen many leaders like that also. When my current boss is like that, he only if there is a trouble, he will get into that issue and try to solve. So some leaders are extremely empowering in nature, and that's what people like. But there are some other leaders who will get into all the nitty-gritty details and then ask why and how and manage a thing. And I think in a way, like they act like project managers. It may be good, but sometimes it may not also be very facilitative. So
But this
very
kind of
tight
leaders
governance.
are preferred in senior level. Can we say that this empowering leaders are preferred in senior level, and you need this task managers or micromanagers at the junior level? Can we say that?
Yes, exactly. You definitely need at frontline or mid manager level somebody who gets into the details and knows what is happening in the team, very well aware of all the details. But at senior level, it's got to be empowered, trust, and it is called like the style of delegation. There is go for delegation, which is do this, do that, do this task, etc. The other type of delegation is we entrust them completely to deliver what the outcomes required by the business, and then they you have some sort of a review mechanism where you have good governance. But detailed micromanagement and follow up and tracking and checklist, with there are some leaders who have 2000 items on their checklist for 2 years and then keep tracking that is not very empowering. So I'm seeing that wherever the leaders have been exemplary, the top leadership, and there have been leaders who are emotionally very, very resilient and strong. They have been extremely successful. As they grow senior in the organization, cool composure and very calm in a crisis, and very emotionally having a strong demeanor. That is where I've seen the projects also being very successful there.
Can you give an example?
Can
you give an example?
Yeah, I
without
know
taking
that.
names.
So in the plant, when we had to set up, we had an engineering manager. Today he's a CEO of a company, and he had to set up the Nokia plant. The entire equipment. See, we're producing 17 million phones a month. Okay, I've never seen him get angry with anybody. In 4 months, he set up the whole plant. And many of the leaders there were like that. All the leaders there, they had that kind of behavior. I've never seen them losing their calm, losing their cool. In fact, there were two leaders. One was handling the SAP project, and they all in 4 or 5 months they got it done. And the other was handling the entire layout of the plant and bringing in the equipment and installation and running the plant and the production. They were absolutely fantastic leaders because they were just very cool. And the only thing that they did was spent a lot of time on hiring the right people and delegating them completely and training them. They hired them and equipped them. Okay. So what helped me, I can say, is as soon as I joined, I think the boss just gave the laptop and said, these are all the people, you just get connected. And after that, he disappeared. And then there was another boss. Next day, he said, you also have a boss in Singapore. And then, they were just handling. They only linked you up with people, all with resources all over the world. All they had to do was talk to so-and-so, talk to so-and-so, interact with these people, and connected you with a lot of people. And then they did not say these are things outcome expected, why this is not done, why that is done. No, nothing like that. Nobody ever asked why this is done and not done. They just allowed you to perform. So I've seen those leaders where I've never seen them getting angry. It's very difficult. In fact, now I'm thinking how much more I should be a better leader. But yes, they never get angry. They were able to take on that pressure. They were able to be very resilient in very tough circumstances and be able to deliver to the market.
How do you learn that, madam, to be a cool leader? Not getting angry.
Oh, I think that is only by watch. My husband is one person like that. He's, I think, very cool with his team. Yeah, but by shadowing, so that is something I've seen, right? You shadow some people, some of the leaders, and observe them. That is the best example. Only by observing them in a meeting, or by observing them in stressful situations, being how they handle a crisis. And yeah, I've even seen in the current organization one of the leaders.
I think
Absolutely cool. I've never seen him getting angry.
it is connected to born characters, right? Born characters,
Born
traits.
character. Okay. It's,
Sometimes, no, I wanted to be cool, but I can't do that. But Sir, I've seen Sir's case, and I also know visited Sir's office. I know that how he handles people, and if you want to shoot a person, he will do that. I know both, sir. But this is the case actually. We wanted to be really cool, but sometimes we miss that. So that's a thing.
He's asking whether this can be learnt or it's born.
Born or made, you can also develop it, I think.
You can certainly develop it, madam.
Yeah, it can
it's
be
a character what you learn from your mistakes, or the interaction what you have with your team members, isn't it, Rekha?
Yes. So, madam, shall I ask you one question? What are the human relation factors we should consider?
Human relationship?
Human relations factors to be considered in an organization. In an organization while making recruiting or while recruiting people.
So different factors, like when see, for example, in a manufacturing plant when you're recruiting people, we actually looked at we were trying to get 70% as women employees, and electronic manufacturing we were looking for finger dexterity, because you know, in a phone the motherboard has got 400 components. The phone that we have, this probably has 600 to 800 components, tiny components that are there. So some of them have to be assembled, some are then assembled by the machine. So there should not be palm sweating, finger dexterity should be there. So the factors are so wide. Whereas if you're looking for a COO or a CEO or a CXO, very strong leadership skills is needed. You know, it is end of the day at high level, it is only leadership, ability to build trust within the team, retain the team, develop the team, grow the team, and deliver through the team. So because you can't otherwise deliver everything, no, and even in HR it's very difficult. There's so many facets of HR which you will not know. So it is relying on the team and having a very good team to be able to deliver for the stakeholders. So so the factors vary from level to level in every aspect. But yes, the culture determines the way you recruit, and the environment and the industry also determines how you will look at people, and you know.
And it is different for different companies.
It will be different for different companies. So if you look at financial services company, then people have to be process driven. I mean, they are handling like 1 crore or 10 crore transaction or 100 crore transaction of a customer. So how much they are trusting you to deal with the transaction accurately, isn't it? So if that investor's money is being handled, one is integrity is important. The other is following the process, being very compliant. Okay, because being highly compliant and ensuring that a wrong transaction doesn't happen, and that discipline. See, for example, there was one account number that got changed. Broker's account number got changed. Brokerage, instead of paying the brokerage to the broker, there was a change of bank mandate. The brokerage got paid to a investor. Okay, so broker didn't get his money for that day, or you know, that whatever his commission was not paid. Finally, they got it back and paid it to him. But still, small mistakes like this should not happen. So that attention to process and detail and not violating any process. Any violation is like, you know, trying to jump the signal. Okay, those days in NIT, I used to jump the signal when I was driving. I didn't even realize that, you know, jumping a signal is bad. I used to drive a two-wheeler and go. And my husband can say that. But now I would not dare do it, because I learned that this is being compliant is very important, and you should be punished if you jump the signal. So the factors vary depending on the company. That's the thing.
Madam, you had first you worked in Nokia and now you are working in a different company. Madam?
Yeah, CAMPS Financial Services.
Yes. So while after leaving Nokia, how did you come to this company? Or how can a person, when he changes his job, or what are the things he should consider? Or how can he find a good job for himself?
Yeah, I worked with Nokia, and then luckily I got into this Kone because it was again a Finnish company. So globally they were similar. Some of the Nokia employees used to be in Kone in Finland, and so they hired me. I was lucky to get the job in Kone. And then in camps, right? It was a different role. So I was just aspiring for something different, doing something new and doing something different. So how do you get the job? It could be through consultants. It could be through references, and that's it. That's market you have. Normally, they go through consultants. They go through referrals. There are various sources of jobs. No, there are recruitment portals, LinkedIn, Naukri.com, where people can apply for jobs. We hire
Ma'am,
candidates.
are you asking about how this change affects her, how this transition from one job to another takes place, and how she adjusts to that? Are you talking about that, ma'am? Are you asking that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like when a person, he changes from one job to another, how will he be able to? Sometimes the person who was working at a very high top position, he might be joining a new company at a lower position. So how will he be able to adjust that? That's what I asked.
Yes, ma'am. That is one important thing is that adaptability. So actually, when you go through a job change or a company change, it is stressful. The reason is there is a lot of learning that needs to be unlearning and learning that needs to happen. One is you unlearn certain, you drop certain behaviors and you learn some new behaviors. That is aligned to the other company values. And then you are struggling a lot in the initial stages. What happens is for a lot of decisions, you rely on your managers, you seek approvals, and so on. And then over a period of time, you find the job easy. So the first 1 year or 2 years is difficult because you have to adapt to that environment and also adapt to different people and their styles and their way of working. So there is some shock that you experience when you go from one company to the other. Huge shock is there. Culture shock will be there. Because the way things are done in company A will be totally different than the way things are getting done in company B. So that spirit of inquiry, trying to be curious about what it is, and then observing and slowly learning from observing what you can contribute, and then you start contributing. It is a challenge actually. It is adaptability, is flexibility. One has got to be very flexible. Today we are all working from home, right? So we have to be very flexible about everything, very adaptable.
Can we say that when you, joined in Kone from Nokia, the transition was easier because the companies were similar, whereas when you joined CAMS, it was far more difficult? And what kind of difficulties?
Actually, I'll tell you, when I joined Nokia and Kone, while Nokia Global, we were very much aligned to Nokia Global because the people of Nokia in India were actually from abroad, all the leaders. So there were people who worked 20 years in Nokia Finland who came here. There were people who worked in Nokia US who came here. And most of the leaders were Nokia people who worked in the rest of the Nokia and in other countries or in India in other businesses. So they were slowly imbibing the culture of Nokia in India in our Chennai plant. Okay, so that was a very different environment. But when I was hired in Kone, what I found is Kone. So Nokia Chennai is a greenfield project. So the Nokia Chennai plant grew like a Nokia Global to some extent. Okay, but whereas Kone was an Indian company, it was a Western Crompton company, I think, and then it was taken over by Kone Elevators. So Kone India was very different from Kone Finland. Okay, so while Kone Finland and Nokia Finland were somewhat similar, Kone Finland and Kone India were slightly different. So we had to actually, it was again a very old manufacturing plant. So we had to slowly adapt and bring that cultural, bridge the cultural gap, and also bring some Kone global practices into Kone India. So whether it was their engagement survey, which was very new to Kone India, but it was very similar to the Nokia engagement survey. Similarly, their performance management system, their some of the values, all that we had to bring here. So it was interesting way of trying to amalgamate Kone India with Kone Global. Then coming to CAMS from a manufacturing plant is very different. It's a very fast-paced organization, CAMS. What will take 6 months change management in Kone will be done in 2 days here and will be thriving on chaos. So very different.
Sir, I think we got 8 minutes, sir. 8 minutes.
Yeah,
Any
another,
questions from,
yeah,
Dr.
7, 8
Rajani
minutes, yeah.
or Rekha ma'am?
Ma'am, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. I think you have to unmute.
You're on mute, ma'am.
Mute. Please mute.
Unmute.
No, unmute, yeah.
Yes.
Speak now.
Yes.
No, we can't hear you. Something wrong with your microphone.
No. She
No.
has to mute
Your microphone is not okay. When she unmuted also, we could not hear.
It is unmuted, sir. She has to mute.
Yeah, speak now, ma'am. Speak.
Dr. Rajani madam? No, we are not here.
Some speaker
It's still
problem.
on mute only.
No, she unmuted. Even then, we are not able to hear. Some problem in the speaker. Her microphone.
Or Dr. Rekha ma'am? Any questions to ask from Dr. Rekha ma'am?
I have already asked, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted
okay.
to know one more thing, ma'am. Like for increasing the productivity of the, or we can say to improve the work in a firm, how do you how can we improve the productivity of the persons who are working in a firm, in an organization? Like we'll be having some standards to measure, right?
Yeah. So in every company, there'll be some productivity measures. So productivity will be a very important metric, and HR also will follow that metric. So constantly what companies will try to do, they'll try to look at an improvement in the productivity. So 5% improvement in the productivity year on year. So and that productivity will be linked to your recruitment also. So and the skill development. So when you want to increase the productivity, your recruitment will come down a little bit, because with the existing same workforce, how much more you can do, and that you will do by improving the skills. So you will have a skill index, you will measure the skills, you will measure the skill certified percentage, and also look at whatever training that needs to be done on the job and classroom, and constantly look at what is the productivity, is it at 90% or 95%. Each company will have a certain productivity measure. Like for example, in a phone plant, how many phones you produce per hour? Okay, is it 100 phones or 1000 phones, or that number of phones produced per hour? We'll measure it also. Sometimes the trainers will go stand on the floor, they will observe in a particular cell, production cell, and in 1 hour's time how much they have done. Okay, so that is one way, and they will score them on the productivity and have all these metrics which are followed. In an elevator industry, it could be like how many elevators are getting serviced by the technician in a day. Is it 6 elevators or 7 elevators or 8 elevators? So therefore, in 25 days or 22 days, how many elevators in a month he will service? Therefore, if we have 2000 elevators to be serviced, how many technicians we need? And last year we did it with X number of technicians. Now if you want to improve the productivity, if you have increased number of elevators, we still manage with X plus or small delta, so that the productivity percentage is a 5% increase. And then in CAMS, it is like how many transactions are being processed by that person in a day or in a month. So like that, each company will have, or utilization hours, 7 hours are they utilizing. We have a system, he is working on the system for 7 hours. We measure his operations on the system. Out of 8 hours, at least 6.5 hours or 7 hours is he able to do productive transaction processing. That's also tools that are used to measure productivity and then publish it and track it and reward it, recognize it, and follow that as a key metric.
I think one question can be asked. Dr. Rajini ma'am, are you ready now?
Yes, sir. Yes. I hope you can listen.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Madam, you were talking about the selection recruitment process and you assess different types of skills. Normally, how long do this selection process take?
Again, it depends on the level at which you are hiring. If you take a frontline production person, no, a junior level production person, probably it should not take more than a week or 2 weeks. And if you're talking about the exact interview process, it can even be half an hour. I mean, a good interview should take about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. If you do a proper situational interview or a behavioral interview or a competency-based interview, and that should be about 45 minutes. Then, so it is searching for, there is a cycle time, lead time or turnaround time that we follow. So there is some time that should be given for interviewing candidates. If you're hiring a manager, at least 1 month you take to interview good candidates. And then the offer process is there, and then the notice period process is there. So sourcing, interviewing, offering, different stages of selection is there. Assessment, using any appropriate assessment tools, and then the decision making amongst 4 candidates. You're going to decide whom, decision making and offer, and then the joining. It can vary. Some positions, very junior executive positions, even 15 days or 30 days. Some positions 90 days. CXO position maybe even 6 months.
So during this tenure, they are put on probation.
After they join. No, this is the selection process. After that, you roll out the offer, and then he resigns in the other company, and then he joins. And after that, to induct them, it takes about 6 months. Yeah, they are on probation for 6 months.
Okay.
Sir, can we continue or?
You have some questions, or I think we can close it. We had it.
I have got questions, but what about others?
No, sir. It's okay, sir. It was really a very eye-opener for us, madam. When Damodaran sir mentioned about this sort of interaction, I was not much convinced, what you can say. I did not get a view how this thing will go around. But thank you, sir. Thank you, Damodaran sir and Ravi sir, Jemima madam, for providing us.
Dr. Ravi sir.
For giving us a complete different view, perception, of what we teach in classes. It's really worth sharing your experiences, madam.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
It was very good, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
The work that you do is
so
very
much.
good. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
All right. You can, yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah,
Good night.
we have 1 minute. Yeah, so on Thursday, anyway, we are in the group. I will share the next plans.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.